Electrocast.
Your brain needs support, and new Ollie Brainy Chews are a delightful way to take care of your cognitive health. Made with scientifically backed ingredients like Thai ginger, L-theanine, and caffeine, Brainy Chews support healthy brain function and help you find your focus, stay chill, or get energized. Be kind to your mind and get these nootropic chews at ollie.com. That's OLLY.com. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
With supply chains becoming more complex, you need to stay on top of the latest logistics developments. So if you work with logistics, you need the Beyond the Box podcast from Maersk. It's the easy way to keep up to date with everything from digital disruption in logistics to the need for supply chain resilience in today's market. Find out more and keep ahead of the game with the Beyond the Box podcast on logistics insights at maersk.com/insights.
This week on the Deep Leadership Podcast.
If you want to be a leader, get yourself a coach or a mentor and find out, what are the pieces, the capacities of leadership that you need to develop, and blend those with who you are as a person, and you can't help but be successful.
Hi, and welcome to Deep Leadership. I'm your host, John Rennie. Well, I hope all is well with you today. It's another beautiful day here in North Carolina, and I'm enjoying a hot cup of coffee from our friends at the Salty Sailor Coffee Company. Salty Sailor is a better-known coffee brand and is the official coffee of the Deep Leadership Podcast. Listeners get 10% off their amazing selection of fresh roasted coffee by going to saltysailorcoffee.com and entering the code DEEP at checkout. Today's episode is also brought to you by our other sponsors, Leader Connect, Ignite Management Services, and Liberty Strength. All these sponsors help me bring these shows to you each and every week, so I highly encourage you to click on their links below and check them out. In this episode of the Deep Leadership Podcast, I'm joined by Lori Mazan, a distinguished executive coach and co-founder of Sounding Board Incorporated. Now, we sat down and discussed modern leadership development practices, the need for a leadership revolution, the challenges in developing leaders in the current work environment, and the importance of personalized coaching and mentoring for effective leadership development. Now, I've often said that we need a change in leadership development, and Lori is leading that charge with her work. And now, this was a fascinating conversation I know you'll love. So are you ready to dive in? Let's get started.
Welcome to Deep Leadership. Leadership is a people business. That's the philosophy of your podcast host, John Rennie. As a former Cold War submarine officer who spent 20 plus years leading businesses in corporate America before starting his own manufacturing business, he knows that leadership matters. Are you ready for some real-world actionable advice from John as well as his expert guests?
I'm ready.
The show starts right now.
Welcome to the Deep Leadership Podcast. Today I'm joined by Lori Mazan. Lori is a distinguished 25-year executive coach who has provided tens of thousands of coaching sessions to top leaders from Fortune 100 CEOs to venture-backed startup executives. She is the co-founder, president, and chief coaching officer of Sounding Board, Inc., which offers a tech-driven, human-centric approach to leadership development. As the go-to leadership development firm for forward-looking companies like Chevron, Sprint, Citibank, and others, Lori and her team have developed capabilities that produce immediate, positive business results. Lori has put these strategies into her new book, Leadership Revolution, The Future of Developing Dynamic Leaders. And I'm excited to have her on the show to learn more about how we can develop dynamic leaders through more modern training practices. So, Lori, welcome to the show.
Hi, John. Happy to be here.
It's good to meet you. And I'm really excited to talk to you. You've got a lot of experience in coaching executives, in teaching leadership, and I want to learn from you today. But first of all, let's dive right into it. What is your definition of leadership?
Yes, well, I was really excited to start with that question because my definition of leadership is very simple. A leader is someone who people want to follow. So if you have no followers, you are not a leader. And since the subtitle of your book, Becoming a Leader Worth Following, I figured we're pretty close together on our definition of leadership.
I absolutely love that. And I say that often to people, like, as a leader, every once in a while, you should turn around to see if there's anyone following you. Because if no one's following you, you're not really doing a good job as a leader. That's a fantastic.
Yeah, you're not actually a leader. Yeah. And that kind of leadership, you can apply it in any situation that you want. It can be formal leadership like a title, but it also can be formal leadership, right? Where you're leading a group of people or a team or a community or a family or whatever it is. So it's not exclusive to people who are named leaders.
Yeah, and that's a really good, interesting point. I have a friend of mine who wrote a book called Leadership from the Middle, and it was talking about like how there were leaders all throughout the organization. And he said, like almost everyone who's a leader has a follow me moment where they say, hey, let's go do this. And then suddenly they're the, de facto leader of that group. And I've seen it, and time again, running organizations, is that you see the natural leaders in groups. And I'm looking for the natural leader. And it's not necessarily based on rank or based on position. It's usually based on their level of influence with a group.
Yeah, or their desire. So one of the things maybe to debunk just a little bit is natural leaders. Like really anybody can step up and be a leader if they want to. And whether you're a natural born leader or not, right? It's like if you are leading and people are following you, you're a leader, whether that was acquired or naturally born.
Right, exactly. Yeah, that's an important point to mention, is that it doesn't necessarily, yes, some people, and it's a small percentage of people that are born with natural leadership ability, but you don't have to have it to be the leader. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's nice. Like it's a nice, a bump if you have it, but not at all required.
Right, exactly. So one of the things I'm excited about is this idea of a leadership revolution, which is the name of your book. You say we need a leadership revolution, and explain why you think that that's the case.
Yeah, so particularly in leader development and growth, we are still developing leaders, as somebody said humorously, like it's 1999, because the majority of approaches and tools and training that we use were all developed in the last century for work environment that's very different than the current work environment. And the powers that be that develop leaders haven't really caught up yet with the change and what's going to be needed to develop leaders for the future environment versus the past environment.
Yeah, I see this as a big challenge, and I've talked to a lot of people since the pandemic and following the pandemic about this subject, because I think the workplace has changed dramatically since the pandemic, especially. And I think there more and more pressure is on employers to be great leaders, because right now their company employees have no reason to stick around, right? Unless you create a situation where they want to stick around, and so I think it's a different environment completely.
It's a different environment, I think, since the pandemic, for two reasons. Now you have remote or hybrid work versus in-person work. And secondly, I think during the pandemic, people started having a better experience of work-life and balance, and kind of coming to grips with their own sense of values and saying, I want to work at something that's meaningful for me. But that was just the last little piece, because really the work environment has changed since the last century. Like we now have 6 generations in the workforce versus 2 or 3. We have an amazing amount more diversity than we did back in 1970. We have this younger generations who are wanting more meaning and not just to work for the sake of working. They grew up in a more supportive and sort of personalized environment. And that's the learning model that they need and want to develop as leaders. So much has changed. Also, I would say the environment's much less predictable than it was back in 1970. And it's also much more global and visible with social media than it was in the last century. So it's fairly dramatically different environment. And yet the way we're developing leaders is still the same as it was back then.
Yeah, I definitely see that as a challenge. The other thing I would say too is the kind of problems that we're trying to solve these days are complex. And you know, one smart guy in a corner office or a smart woman in a corner office is not going to solve the problem. You need the collective wisdom of a team to be able to solve these tough challenges. They're so complicated and they're changing and evolving so quickly. You can't just have the guru in the corner office, the Steve Jobs who had all the answers. It doesn't exist anymore.
No, it doesn't work that way. And the sort of the need to handle those problems is pushed down in the organization. Yeah. So you just think about diversity, you know, that diversity isn't handled in the C-suite. It's handled on the production floor. You know, it's handled way lower down in the organization than it used to be handled. So even up and coming new managers and middle managers and novice leaders need a much broader set of approaches to be able to deal with that complexity they're faced with now that they wouldn't have been faced with 30, 40, 50 years ago.
Yeah, I definitely see that as a big change, a big shift, and a big challenge. And again, I do agree with you. I feel like most of our leadership training development is outdated. And I'm I'm a Gen Xer, and I'm even admitting it. I recognize that the way I learned how to lead is wrong compared to what the workforce is today.
Yeah, I think one thing that I think is proliferated is the idea that everything can be solved by skills. And the basic skills training started in the 70s with oceans training for safety. And when people saw that actually had impact, they just generalized that to everything. So even very currently, people are talking about upskilling, reskilling, but it's still at the very foundational level of skills. And skills themselves, though needed, is not enough to be an effective leader. You have to be able to put those skills together in groups. You have to be able to apply those skills in your specific context, with your specific environment, with your style as a leader, with unpredictable circumstances. You're just not going to be able to do that with basic online, skill training. And there's just a lot of stats that show only about 10% of that skills training is transferred to actual on-the-job usage. So that means all that money going in and 90% of it's just wasted.
I definitely see this. One of the ways I was exposed to it, I do get a chance to speak at MBA programs and master programs. I do like a leadership session once a semester with different students. And one of the first times I did that, I asked the students, well, how many it was an MBA program, international MBA program at a big university. And I said, well, how many leadership classes have you taken in this course of study? And this was a well-known program. And they said, well, you're the first person to come to talk to us about leaders. And I said, well, what are you learning about? And it's accounting, operations, ethics, all the things that they need for skills, right, to be a business leader. But missing out on the most important thing, which was how do you manage people to get difficult things done, which is what you're going to be doing in your. So it was interesting that the skills that we were teaching were sort of peripheral to leadership and not actually essential to leadership.
Yeah, I have sympathy a little bit for that, which is it's really hard to teach leadership. There isn't one way to be successful as a leader. In the last century, there was a lot of research. If you just have these 5 skills or these 3 traits or something, you'll be a good leader. And clearly that never was true and never worked, because if that were true, we would just all do those 3 things and be successful. But no, it's not that simple. And so I think it's hard for people to try to figure out how to teach something that's so intangible. And it's much easier to teach the very tangible, Accounting tools, yes, we can teach that. How to lead an accounting function, no, we actually can't teach that, right? Or how to be a CFO and advise an entire company. It's hard to teach that because those skills are much harder to understand, acquire, and apply.
Yeah, that is very interesting. It's well said because again, it's easy to teach a skill like, quality or accounting or engineering, right? But when you're talking about managing an engineering group, that gets a little, all right, then there's some specific things you have to deal with there that are unique and different. So
that one, engineering particularly, has been a very visible one because it's clear that engineering leaders have struggled in their leadership roles, even though they're brilliant, right, as engineers. And some schools have taken up teaching leadership as part of the engineering program because I've seen that problem over and over. Yeah. My actual coaching business that I did for a long time, my little tagline was transforming brilliant scientists and technologists into exceptional leaders. Because these people are brilliant, they're amazing at what they do. But if you were, say, a microbiologist, your entire education was like looking in a microscope. It had nothing to do with the people around you. And now you're suddenly the CEO of a biotech. Like, what do you do?
We'll be right back after a quick word from our sponsors.
As a leader, you're responsible for the mission and the people assigned to you. Regardless of the size of your team, employees are depending on you for their lives and careers. For the sake of your team and the people who entrust you with this role, you need to master the skills to become a great leader. Best-selling leadership author John Rennie is proud to introduce the Qualified Leadership book series. This new series teaches you how to become a people-centered leader. Great leaders know that employees who are respected, appreciated, and allowed to grow will go the extra mile. These books provide real-world leadership wisdom written from a hands-on perspective. If you want to be a more effective leader, this is the one book series you should read this year. This 3-book series contains the following best-selling leadership books: I Have the Watch, You Have the Watch, and All in the Same Boat for one low price of $39.99. Begin your journey to become a leader worth following. Go to johnsrennie.com and get your order in today.
This episode is brought to you by Leader Connect, a leadership training company and video platform founded by the leadership book author and Deep Leadership Podcast guest, Neil Jerd. Leader Connect is a video and podcast streaming platform for leaders and teams. Watch it alone or as a team, and each video supports you and your team, allowing you to improve performance and build a great culture. Join hundreds of experts and learn about leadership, planning, public speaking, team building, mindfulness, and a range of other subjects that will help you lead well and build a great team. I'm proud to say that I'm one of the experts on this platform. Leader Connect is offering a 10% discount to all Deep Leadership listeners. Go to leader-connect.co.uk and enter the code DEEP at checkout. Master your leadership with Leader Connect. This episode is brought to you by Ignite Management Services. Ignite is led by Mike Watson, who you might remember from episode 137. Mike and his team believe that everything starts with leadership, whether it's strategy execution or cultural transformation. It's the role of the leader to create the conditions for their people to succeed. The team at Ignite can help you develop critical habits to enhance your leadership capability and transform your business. Ignite Management is now offering the Resilient Leadership Assessment Tool. This is an online questionnaire designed to assess and guide leadership development, coaching, and team building. It provides leaders an opportunity to gain insights into their leadership strengths and development needs. After taking this assessment, you will receive a custom, detailed report that provides practical and actionable recommendations to enhance your effectiveness. I have taken this assessment myself and found it to be extremely valuable in helping me make changes to my leadership approach. Right now, Ignite is offering 15% off the price of this tool to the Deep Leadership audience. Go to ignitemanagement.ca and enter the code START15 at checkout to get started today.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up during inflation, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, bit to get 30, bit to get 20, 20, 20, bit to get 20, 20, bit to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold!
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 up front for 3 months plus taxes and fees. Promo rate for new customers for limited time. Unlimited more than 40 gigabytes per month. Slows full terms at mintmobile.com.
At Evernorth Health Services, we believe costs shouldn't get in the way of life-changing care, and we're doing everything in our power to make it possible. Behavioral health solutions that also keep your projections at their best? It's possible. Pharmacy benefits that benefit your bottom line? It's possible. Complex specialty care that cares about your ROI? It's possible. Because we're already doing it. All while saving businesses billions. That's Wonder made possible. Learn more at evernorth.com/wonder.
It's really interesting. I often say to people, I'm a recovering engineer because I have a technical background. I've studied engineering. I'm a mechanical and nuclear engineer, but that's not. But I quickly found that that's not how you get things done in the world, right? It's just through technical skills.
Yeah.
You need people, and I love the people side of it. But I think I'm a little bit of an unusual technical person, right? In that I enjoy the people side of things.
Yeah. And I guess my question to you would be like, how did you learn to become a leader when that wasn't any of your training or background?
Yeah, well, I think for me, I always tell the story, like I got thrown into a leadership job when they locked the doors on the submarine and said you were in charge of this group of people. And like you sort of figured it out. So I had a great opportunity to do that at a young age. But yeah, I think that a lot of times we don't get those chances to actually lead people and get those opportunities to learn about people and what have you. I always say I was at an unfair advantage because I got a chance to learn and explore human relationships in a very interesting way, on a submarine, under the ocean for 3 months at a time. So that's a great place to, if you like people or if you're interested in, it's such an interesting human experiment to see the way people react to pressure and how they deal with change and all those sort of things. So it was a fun place to learn leadership and experiment in leadership because it was such a unique, very strange, unique environment to learn. Yeah.
Kind of a trial by fire, right? So I actually, for listeners, I really recommend startup environment or an entrepreneurial setting, because if you haven't had training in leadership and you're not sure what to do there, just immersing yourself in the place where you have to be a leader. It's just driven by need, can push you, sort of to take the steps you need to learn about that. And a startup environment, as well as maybe a military environment, is a really good place to just jump in and give it a shot.
I agree. I mean, I've been doing it for 8 years. Started with my company. So it is a great place to learn leadership. There's lots of challenges when you don't have a lot of money and you're trying to do difficult things. It's a very interesting place because I often say to myself, why do people stay with me, right? They can go to a bigger company and get more benefits and more options and what have you. But it really takes that high level of influence to get people to stay on board. You have to have a vision. You have to communicate that vision. You have to get people excited about where you're headed and keep them excited. It's a big challenge. Startup environment is a really interesting place to lead, and it's one of the more exciting but difficult places to lead too.
Agreed. So I think one of the things to be successful at that is you have to be okay to fail. Mm. So it's learning basically by failure and keep finding out what doesn't work until you find out what does work. Yes, yeah. And I'm a big proponent of failure. We talk about on the show how we learn quicker through failure than we do in any other way possible. So, and I think that if we give people opportunities to fail in a controlled manner, they're going to learn leadership quicker through that process, through mentorship and giving people challenges where they get a chance to develop those skills in a controlled environment is a great way to do it. So I can give a little plug for coaching here because although coaching also involves a lot of failure, the concept of having a partner with you to try to navigate some of this tends to accelerate that development as a leader. And the way it does it is that partner helps you shift how you're thinking about things. So that's also what failure does. But because our brains are very habituating, we often have to fail multiple times before we figure out, wait a minute, I need to think about this differently. And what a coach does is can kind of short circuit that a bit and help you understand, here's how you're thinking about it now, and here's a few other ways you could adopt to think about it and really change your mindset. And then once your mindset's changed, you can attach new behavior to the new thinking, and that tends to make it stick over time.
I love that. And again, listeners, you're listening in. If you don't have a mentor or coach and you're really trying to become a better leader, you really should consider getting one. I think it's a great way. I always had a mentor as I was coming up. I mentor 2 CEOs myself right now. I think they just had one session today, and he said, I appreciate these sessions so much because I have someone I can talk to. Because I can't talk to anyone else, about these issues. I can't talk to my team. I need you. I need these sessions to be able to think and work out issues and challenges. So listeners, if you don't have a mentor, you don't have a coach, consider getting one because it will make you a better leader for sure.
Yeah, it's really having that thinking partner. I think that is the critical part of it. Like when you're in a leadership role, there's nobody who is neutral for you. Mm. Right? Your investors want something from you, your exec team wants something from you, the employees want something from you, the customers want something from you, everybody wants something from you. So to have this outside person who's neutral and can just help you think through things and challenge you and point out the blind spots you might not see yourself, just entirely valuable. I just actually don't know any successful leader who hasn't had that kind of thinking partner.
I agree. So much for sure. So what are some new ways that we need to be thinking about developing leaders? You mentioned skill-based approaches don't necessarily work. That the workforce has changed, the role of leaders has changed. So what are some ways that we need to be thinking about leadership development going forward?
Yeah, so we use the terms horizontal and vertical development. Horizontal being you're adding skills at the foundational level. Vertical being you are figuring out how to apply those skills in sets, in a specific context, with a specific outcome, in your own style, in unpredictable environments. And that kind of art of leadership really requires a different kind of development than those foundational skills. And I always say this thing, don't just upskill, up level. In other words, your thinking has to change. So what you're thinking about as a new manager and how you're applying the skills there is very different than what you're thinking about with a much larger team and having to navigate across an organization. And then what you're thinking about as someone at the top of the house is very different than what you might be thinking about as a new manager. So this change in the level of thinking and then that influencing how you're applying your sets of skills really can't be taught in the training environment. It really takes an individual or a group of individuals to help you think differently. And so in the age of AI, I actually think, the human experience and a really more of a personalized development is going to be the way to go. Not that AI can't help. It can help you very much with the foundational things, but it's not going to be able to help you with the context-driven, unpredictable, what is the environment doing right now kinds of things, because AI is based on what has already happened. It is not based on what might be happening coming down the line.
That makes sense. So essentially what you're saying is that, a cookie cutter approach to leadership development is not appropriate these days. So you should seek out a customized approach to be able to learn leadership at the level that you're at and the level that you're trying to get to. So that means, look, you can read a book about leadership, or you can watch a video on it, and that's okay for foundational purposes, but you really need customized, focused training to be able to get you to where you're trying to get to. Like an athlete, like I'm a pitcher. I'm not just a baseball player. I'm a pitcher. So I'm going to get a pitching coach that's going to help me, because I'm a curveball pitcher, and I'm going to get a pitching coach who specifically works on curveballs to be able to become a better curveball pitcher. So you're looking for that really specific. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yeah, very much so. And athletics is a really good example, because you don't see anyone getting to the Olympics or getting to the top of their game without a coach. And why would you think as a leader you can get to your top of your game without a coach as well? I think what's different for the new environment is because of technology, we can use software to really support this kind of more personalized one-on-one development without it costing an arm and a leg. I think people in the top of the house have taken advantage of coaching and mentoring for a lot of their career, but it was very expensive and behind closed doors. And now software is allowing us to provide this really to all leaders in an organization, and even all potential leaders in an organization. And, so the research shows, right, the more employees have the ownership and leadership ability in the organization, the more successful the organization is.
Yeah, that's for sure. So what would it sort of like real or practically look like with AI approach to customized leadership development? Is it software? Is it what would it look like physically for the leader?
So, this is actually the company that I operate provides this. So the software is there so that coaching and mentoring can be distributed company-wide. And it includes all the things you need: the admin support, the scheduling, the video, the tracking, the progression, and the impact. All of that's available in the software. I think what AI can offer is a statement of patterns that might be visible in the interaction between, say, the mentor and the mentee, or the coach and the coachee, that may not be visible to them in the moment. So getting a little feedback after the fact, like, hey, here's some things you talked about. Here's your action items. Here's some things to forward the conversation or to think about for next time. Like, it's just very helpful to almost keep a record of your development. What it can't do, though, it can't do what the coach can do, which is like delve into your thinking about why you are operating like that and help you change that thinking to some other way of operating that then is more successful for you.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I do encourage listeners that you do utilize AI to get some interesting insights. I know, for example, I run all these interviews through AI when we're done, and it like summarizes, here are the key points we talked about. I'm like, I don't remember that being a key point, but that is a really, it's sort of interesting how it sort of finds and identifies things that maybe you missed or you overlooked or you didn't think of it as a serious thing. So yeah, I do think that those tools are really helpful. And this is coming from a Gen Xer where I'm like, okay, that's kind of cool. Like that found that little nugget of information. I didn't really realize it was there.
Yeah, or maybe just kind of slipped away, and that's bringing it back up to the surface. So something like AI is really useful as a support tool for coaching and mentoring. And then you have software there for deployment and measurement of those learning opportunities. And then all of that's there supporting the human, face-to-face interaction that we're saying is so critical for leader development.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So, you've been doing leadership and executive coaching for a long time. So what are some things you've learned over these 30 years that you might want to share with our listeners about things you've observed or things that are really critical for successful leadership?
Yeah, I'll say one thing, which is there's not one way to be a good leader. What really makes a good leader is when people blend a set of skills with who they actually are authentically as a person. And that is what is the magic, that blend. I would say a second thing is there is a fundamental capacity that leaders need. And I call it either central equilibrium or sometimes like the internal compass. And the idea is no matter what's going on, how many forces are, coming at you, that you are maintaining your internal balance. The analogy I use is like being the center of the storm, like, that like little quiet place that's in the middle of the hurricane, and you can kind of see everything swirling around, but you're personally not being hit. That internal stability is like a core capacity for leaders, because others will follow you and trust you if they feel like you are not going to fall over. It's scary to people if they push on you and you lose your balance. So that big sense of, keeping that equilibrium regardless of what's going on is a capability that is inherent to exceptional leadership. And yet we don't train that at all. Like maybe in the military, you may have some training like that. I got that training through the martial arts. But I think in organizations, we don't do a lot of that training, how to maintain that internal balance regardless of the external environment.
I absolutely love that you speak on this, because I think I just had this conversation with my with the CEO I'm coaching today, which is the idea that we do have to be that calm in the storm, and the listeners who have listened to the show for a long time will know this story is very familiar. But my first deployment was in the North Atlantic in the wintertime, and if you know anything about the North Atlantic, we get very nasty storms in the wintertime. And we were in a storm for 7 days in the North Atlantic. And I remember just everyone was sick. It was, the ship was kind of being tossed about. But I just remember, and I'll never forget the calmness of our captain. Obviously he was very experienced seaman. This was not his first storm. But he remained calm through all that. And it kept us calm. And I think that was something that I learned, like, okay, and I don't know internally if he was battling with doubts or was worried or anything, but he never showed it. And I think that's something that is an exceptional skill in leaders, is to be able to sort of say, to internalize maybe some of the panic you might be feeling when things happen. Like, I know I felt it when COVID hit. My employees were like, what's going to happen to us? Are we going to shut down? And I'm like, I don't know. But I didn't, but I'm like, I don't know. But as soon as I know what's going to happen, I'll let you know. But it's sort of like taking that in, but not actually showing that you're panicking over this.
Right. And you're making a very good point, which is you cannot know and still remain confident and balanced and not show your stress. Like knowing it, you don't have to know to maintain that balance.
Yeah. And I think part of that is we were talking about this maybe with another guest or someone I was talking to recently, the idea of giving yourself a little bit of distance so that when you do get faced with bad news or challenging things, is that you don't react. You have a chance to respond and have that moment of clarity or that moment of distance from your emotion to be able to have a response and not a reaction to a problem.
Oh, 100%. I would say that's in probably the top 10 items I work on with people. Because when people are very committed, they sometimes just get in too close to things. If you're that close, you actually can't see what's happening, right? I use a little example where I say, put your hand on your nose. And if you do, all you can see is this big blur of your hand. You can't see anything behind your hand. But if you just move your hand out a little bit, now you can see your hand and everything around it. So that little bit of distance from whatever you're engaged in is actually super helpful for giving you that space to maintain your balance and be responsive versus reactive.
Yeah. That's such an important skill, and it's hard. And it was actually the CEO I was coaching today. I was talking to about, and I said I wasn't this way when I was younger. I was a hothead. So I was like, I was like, why is this broken? Why is this not operating? And so I think as I've gotten older, I've recognized that that's really important, not to be a hothead and not to be that reactionary leader, but to be.
No, because when you're the reactionary leader, it makes everyone else reactionary.
Yes.
And those are not the best decisions.
Yes.
They're not a thoughtful, contemplative decision. They're just a reaction in the moment. And when you're reacting, you're using the whole part of your brain, not the very best part of your brain to respond.
Yeah. So important lesson there, listeners. Give yourself a little bit of distance. Use that the hand in front of your face idea. That's a great way to visualize that. This is really great, Lori. What final message would you like to leave with our listeners right now?
I would just say, if you want to be a leader, get yourself a coach or a mentor and find out, what are the pieces, the capacities of leadership that you need to develop, and blend those with who you are as a person, and you can't help but be successful.
No, fantastic. Great piece of advice, listeners. And I highly encourage that you think about that over the course of this week. And if you want to be a better leader, it's a great way to be thinking about leadership. So, Lori, how can people find out more about you, your company, and your book, Leadership Revolution?
Yeah, you can find Leadership Revolution on Amazon and any of the online distributors. You can find my company at soundingboardinc.com. You can find me on LinkedIn at Lori Mazan. And I would say, if you're wanting to get a coach for yourself, Sounding Board has an individually designed coaching opportunity as well. And you can look that up at soundingboardinc.com/accelerate.
Fantastic. We're going to put links in the show notes for all of Lori's resources. And again, listeners, if something in this conversation that Lori mentioned really strikes you as interesting, that you want to find out more information, we're going to have links to her website, to LinkedIn. Reach out to her, ask her questions. This is why we bring on experts like Lori onto the show. And so you have somebody that you can go to that has been thinking about these things for 30 years, and she can answer your questions. If you're looking for a coach, they have coaches available. They can get you a coach. And guess what? Most of your company is going to pay for that. So, get yourself a coach. If you want to be exceptional as a leader, if you want to be a leader worth following, get yourself a coach, get yourself a mentor, and don't try to do this alone. You can't do it alone. I've always had a coach. I coach leaders. I highly encourage you to do that. And again, I highly encourage you to reach out to Lori and ask her questions. If something in this conversation really sparked interest to you, I highly encourage you to do it. So, Lori, I want to thank you for coming on the show and sharing your experiences and sharing all this information, especially about the book, Leadership Revolution. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. My pleasure. Really enjoyed the conversation.
I did as well. Well, that's it for today. Thank you for listening to Deep Leadership. If you like this podcast, please subscribe and share so we can continue to build a world with better bosses. Until next time, this is John Rennie saying take care and lead well.
Thank you for listening to Deep Leadership.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you for all you do.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. For more information and updates, please visit our website at www.deepleadershippodcast.com or johnsrennie.com. Until next time, take care.
Welcome to Sarah Talk Solutions. Ladies and gentlemen, you've tuned into a bit of a different type of show. I'm Sarah B and I'm your host. You can find me on my IG, which is Aussie_Sarah_LA. I talk about amazing, relevant conversations and topics and what functions that goes on in this magical, wonderful, wonderful city of the City of Angels. My IG, which is Aussie_Sarah_LA.
Electric acid.
Welcome to Transforming 45, the podcast that celebrates the incredible power of passionate voices. I'm your host, Lisa Boat. Join me in conversation with heart-led humans who share their deeply personal stories of transformation. Transforming 45 is here to uplift, connect, and remind you that it's never too late to write your next chapter. So get ready to be inspired, empowered, and transformed. Join me in this community where through powerful storytelling, we heal and reclaim our inherent magic.
Electric acid.